I was worried for a moment that I was going to end up being the chief of the village. In a sense, I guess I'm the chief's chief, at least for a while. John Stott had a dream. When he founded what today has become Langham Scholars, his dream would be that one day institutions in the majority world in which people were training, people from that area of the world would come no longer predominantly to the West, uprooted of all of the issues that brings, but could be trained in their own areas, in their own regions, in contextual appropriateness, and all of the advantages that brings. That was his dream. He did what he could at the time to make it happen. And then, fast forwarding to 2006, Chris Wright, in our Chiang Mai ISET International Consultation, gave an address on the North-South divide and addressed what we today call the topic of equability. In doing so, he made a statement. He challenged us, as I said, to develop standards and to come alongside the programs in the majority world that were undertaking or thinking about undertaking doctoral studies, that we would initiate a process that would help build capacity in some way so that John Stott's dream could be realized. And as he expounded that, you'll find it actually on the website under the Chiang Mai consultation, this remarkable lecture that Chris gave at that time. He was challenging us. David Baer was sitting in front of me, and he wrote a little note. And he passed me a note. You're not supposed to do that. Serious consultations, no, you are. In this particular case, he was inspired in this sense because he passed me this note and he said something to this effect. Now that is something I could really get excited about. And I knew that Langham and Overseas Council, and these two brothers, and their network of relationships were behind such an initiative. And that encouraged me in my newly adopted role as director of ISET, which began at that consultation in 2006, to undertake or to begin to undertake a process that would allow us to move in that right direction, to help realize John Stott's dream, but it's our dream as well. We have taken on his dream. And so as the result, and as you know, it took us a while to get things in gear. But in 2010, things began to really become a reality when we met together in Beirut in October of 2010. And then again, a year later, in Bangalore. Beirut, Bangalore. Well, a third B didn't materialize because we're in Nairobi. Well, we're in KCB Center, I guess. But that's not important, because here we are for the third consecutive year dealing with emerging issues and dealing with them in such a way that this is done in community. In Beirut, we brought together a dozen majority world programs who were already doing doctoral studies, along with a small group of consultants, a small event, and this kicked off what we called the Beirut process. Out of that event came the Beirut benchmarks. I'm not going to go into, take the time to discuss the details of those documents, whether it's the Beirut benchmarks or the Bangalore affirmations. But those documents are not perfect. They are work in progress, but they are benchmarks. They are a stable point from which we can build, a foundation from which we can continue to build. Not everyone that could have added value to those events was there. For reasons of cost, for reasons of keeping a predominantly majority world group as the center of those consultations, we had to limit the participation at the beginning. But now we're progressively moving in the direction of widening the circle of participation bringing others when there's so much value to be brought from competent people among whom you are tonight. What are the purposes of this process? Fundamentally, this is a relational event. I don't mean relational in the touchy-feely sense. Feel good, although we want to feel good. We want to feel good together, yes. But I mean relational as a foundation for all that we do. In fact, this consultation is based on that theme. The last consultation in Chopra was theological education as relational. We know from the Middle East that nothing of lasting value is ever accomplished without relationship. And so the development of a network for mutual sharing and encouragement and development together was formed. Of course, another purpose is quality development in this specific area of tertiary, doctoral, theological, and evangelical theological education. And then another purpose, and I'm not exhausting the list, was to come to a level of agreement on what constitutes, as Chris Wright would say, doctorness. What do we mean? What are the common denominators, the common qualities, and how do they apply to the work that we're trying to do? You know as well as I do that there are programs out there that call themselves doctoral programs, entrepreneurial, some of them primarily economically motivated, other motivations, some of them very well intentioned. But the question is, are they truly producing doctorness, whatever that means? And so part of our reflection in developing the benchmarks in relation to doctoral evangelical theological education was to put together a set of statements that could serve as a foundation for all subsequent work that would be done. The Bangalore Affirmations were a set of statements that applied the principles of the Beirut benchmarks to the professional doctorate. And then we worked long hours on the development of a draft of what could be called best practice guidelines. This is still a work in progress. We're going to be talking about it here tomorrow in this event. We have not answered all of the questions that need to be answered, but we have at least identified the questions that need to be answered. We have a relational network, a growing relational network in which they can be answered together in community. And by identifying these questions still to be answered, we know that we can progress by God's grace. And this is related to our hopes. Our hopes are to have standards, aspirations in the level of evangelical, high-quality doctoral education that will mobilize us all, setting the bar high, something of which we can be proud, that any one of us would be proud for his own children to be involved in, but yet something that could be contextualized, adapted to all of the various contexts that we have around the world, all of the systems, the various educational systems. And ultimately, our hope is that over time we can continue to grow together, because really that is what we are trying to achieve here. All of this, we need to recall, is related to mission. Theological education is mission beyond evangelism. And if we're convinced of that, and we are convinced that doctoral theological education, as missional, is contributing to the mission of the church, then we have our priorities in place. We don't become involved in a purely academic exercise. We don't get isolated into issues that are peripheral to the kingdom. But together, as we grow together, we are doing mission. And how can we continually recall to one another in this relational community that this is the bottom line of what we are doing? I trust that these few hours that we will be here together will also be impregnated with that spirit of mission. This is a short event compared to the other two, the first two, We had hoped initially that it could be longer. For various practical reasons, it was not possible. But this is the close of the first stage. We trust that it will only be the first stage in an ongoing effort together to make a difference for the kingdom of God, for the mission of God's church, through high-quality, doctoral, evangelical, theological education. So, onward and forward. God, direct us together in these few hours that we're together. Thank you.